What is this? 3 days later, Lamau.
Look, before
POTUS on 810. We have just approved a major disaster declaration for Hawaii. I've directed that we surge support to these brave firefighters and first responders. I'm going to make sure that the state has everything it needs from the federal government to recover. Okay. I don't get it. What's the issue? This happened pretty instantaneously.
And look, before I begin, I want to say a word about the devastating wildfires that
Guys, this was days ago. The fuck are we talking about? This isn't like today. This was last week.
claimed at least 36 lives in Maui and Hawaii. We have just approved a major disaster declaration.
Has he not done it?
Which will get aid into the hands of the people desperately needing help now. They've lost, anyone who's lost a loved one whose home has been damaged or destroyed is going to get help immediately. And I've directed that we surge support to these brave firefighters and first responders and emergency personnel working round the clock there, risking their lives. I just got off the phone before I got here for a long conversation with Governor Josh Green.
Yeah, I mean, I saw this. There are pics of him chilling at a beach. Yeah, that's always so funny when people are like, I mean, people do that all the time. Like every president has been caught that way. Now, Watch This Drive is like a famous fucking George W. Bush moment. It's like, I don't know. I don't know how to feel about this. Biden was asked about the deadly fires in Hawaii where nearly 100 are dead and over 1,000 are still missing. His response, no comment. He just destroyed his 2024 campaign. Like, listen, if there's one good thing that's come out of this, it's that Fox News acts like they give a shit about people in Hawaii now. So that's good because now they're making it seem like they fucking the president doesn't care, so they will act like they do care. Great. Why is this a story? I don't understand. They try to hit him with a gotcha because he's at Rehoboth Beach where where his family is. Like I don't understand it. Look, I don't like Biden either, but this is just the weakest thing to dunk on him of all time. They're desperately trying to make this a Katrina, but it just not is the case. The Federal Aviation Administration has flight restrictions in place to Maui to assist emergency response efforts. The U.S. Coast Guard is conducting underwater surveys of the Lahaina Harbor using sonar technology to identify structural damage. The U.S. Department of State granted a fee waiver for people who lost their U.S. passport book or passport card as a result of the wildfires in Hawaii. Like, I deleted the tweet about President Biden saying no comment when asked about the Maui fires on vacation. It appears it was based on an email by a reporter was lip-reading Biden, who was inaudible and only appeared to say no comment. I generally trust professional reporters because false news narratives around reputable media outlets can be dangerous, but this wasn't up to standard. That said, Biden should declare a climate emergency and commit another trillion a year to his second term to accelerate the clean energy transition. I mean, it's just, they fucking lip-synced them. I do think it's pretty poor taste to be on vacation while there's wildfires and he's not declaring an emergency, but he did. Did he not? Am I crazy? He already did that. What are you talking about? Like, he did it. I don't get it. He did it immediately. We just watched him talk about it like a week ago. Oh, you mean a climate emergency? Okay, yeah, that part. I mean, that's a more holistic approach to the problem. Let's be real. But if you're talking about like him declaring it a emergency, then yeah, that he did do that. His team knew the fallout from declaring an emergency from the beach would have been worse than waiting a day or two. What do you mean? I'm so confused about what's happening here. I mean, but this happened on August 10th, like immediately, instantaneously. So if that's what you guys are like frustrated by, it already happened. Not to say that like any president is doing a great job, but in a situation where there's like in a situation where there's a disaster happening, there's only so much you can do. So I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I don't know what to say about this other than like, seems like the government is behaving in a manner where they are. I mean, they're definitely doing a better job in this circumstance than the former government did with Puerto Rico. You know what I mean? It's definitely not Katrina level. The response is lacking. David Weir from the ground from Hawaii has been pretty vocal about the tepid response so far. Very little available resource and plans to distribute right now. The response is 100% lagging. Yeah. I mean, I definitely that we have. Here's what I will say. We need to have a way more robust approach to national disaster recovery and relief. Because let's be real, we're not fixing any of the fucking problems that are accelerating climate change that create unique weather conditions, create drier vegetation, make wildfire season way more unmanageable, like in places like California or even in Hawaii, everywhere else. So, like, we might as well spend more money on the recovery and relief efforts because, you know, right now we're operating on, like, 2005 metrics. You know what I mean? But we're living in 2023, and let me tell you, shit's gotten way worse, and very quickly, as a matter of fact. So I think that is one of the major issues here. But as far as like as far as delivering recovery to a place like Hawaii, which is, of course, you know, technically colonized land, not a territory like Puerto Rico, but still very far away from U.S. mainland. I mean, it's always going to be a difficult endeavor. You can always do better, though. What? Climate change is a scam. No, it has not gotten worse. That's so funny. It's funny saying this as we are now in August, okay? And the prior month was the hottest July on record. Like, it's just like, it is a funny thing to say when you're like probably dying right now in some capacity, wherever the fuck you are on the planet, because you're on this planet. It's like one of the funnier aspects of like climate change denialism is that it's in a weird way, it's like the inverse of flat eartherism, because like at least the earth feels flat. You know what I mean? When you look outside, it looks flat, it feels flat. How the fuck are there like buildings standing up if it's not flat, right? Like I can understand the stupidity that motivates you into believing that the earth is flat. I cannot comprehend how you can look at a situation that is unfolding all around with respect to extreme weather conditions with like where you're just like, yeah, I live in Arizona. It's 150 degrees today. If I stand outside and accidentally fall on the concrete, I have third-degree burns and I have to go to the hospital. But things are perfectly normal. That's what I don't understand. It's like, bro, you literally are experiencing it. Like, how have you gotten to a point where you are even dumber than the fucking flat earthers who at the very least look at the planet and it looks flat. You know what I mean? It feels flat. Motherfucker walks outside, his shoes are melting. He's like, this is normal. Who amongst us hasn't had shoes melted? What is this? You were cleared?
Know, I can't even blame either of them because your rage didn't know. Hassan knew, and it's not Hassan saying it. So I kind of have to give. It's neither of them.
That wasn't me. You want to know why that wasn't me? Because I wasn't even there. I was backstage. Oh. At that point, I was literally fucking backstage. So here you go. I'll take the free dub. I'll take the free W. Thank you. Oh. If you use a thermometer made before 1993, you'll see the real temperature, brother. It's George Orwell's 1994 thermometer gate. Dude, I love that. Oh my God, that's such a funny way to... Oh, dude. It's awesome. It's awesome. That's fucking awesome. Keep watching. What do you want me to do? You want me to keep watching the fucking clip?
You know, Chat, I can't even...
Okay.
You know, Chat, I was going to apologize even more, okay? I'm going to double down and say, fuck it, okay? It's still somehow Hassan's fault. It always is. For any unknown reason, okay? Because we all live in Hassan's Biden. Okay, Chat, I said it. I don't give a fuck. Guys, this is the hill that launches down, okay? Even, Chat, when it's not Hassan's fault, it still is. I said it, dude.
I like that he's joking about it, but his chat like unironically does feel that way. It's not even like he's making a joke about it clearly, but his chat's like, no, actually that is the case. That is what's going on.
Much love, Felix XQCL.
That's literally what it is. Yeah. Bro.
Alright, you guys. I am out in a parking lot and it is hot today.
Yeah. Excuse me. The shoes melting is fake. It's because, again, 1987 George Orwell, Animal Factory, Animal Crossing. Okay, shoes now are being made in China. Guess what else is being made in China? Guess what else is being made in China? Climate change. The lies surrounding that climate change is real, right? So hear me out. Shoes are being made in China, and they're making the shoes extra meltable on concrete, specifically so that you, as an American, will believe that climate change is happening.
It's supposed to be 118 degrees today, and look at the asphalt. That stuff is just melting. Look what happens when you walk on pavement that's probably close to 150 degrees right now. Look at that. Melt.
Yeah, that's not even the shoes melting. That's actually the asphalt melting, which, again, Chinese asphalt. Okay, that's tar, not asphalt. See, Chinese tar. That's, yeah.
Melting asphalt out here. Stay hydrated, people. The ground.
It's Chinese tar. Yeah. Not to deny climate change, but that happens every year here in Arizona. Is this dude new to the state? I mean, the temperatures he's talking about isn't that bad either, in comparison to how bad it gets. Hasn't Texas had 40 plus straight days of 100 plus degree temperature? Yeah. Oh.
That's what.
We're going to talk about Hawaii. This is from 6 months ago. This is quite literally the reason why, it's not even a joke, that the new conspiracy theory in Hawaii isn't necessarily that, a wildfire occurred and there were 80-mile winds due to a hurricane, and there's incredibly dry vegetation due to the natural the natural grass that originally grew in the region was swapped out with vegetation that actually cannot withstand the temperatures and the sunlight and becomes much drier, which created this circumstance, which was like a tinderbox. None of that is real. It's not Jewish space lasers. It's Chinese space lasers. That's right. Yeah, they didn't rake the leaves in Hawaii, and also it's the Chinese that stopped the raking of the leaves in Hawaii. You think I'm joking, and obviously I don't believe any of this, but a lot of people do believe this, for the record. There are numerous different conspiracy theories revolving the Maui disaster, the Lahaina disaster at this very moment. First, I'm going to give you an update on what's going on. It is now the deadliest in modern U.S. history, the Maui wildfires. I believe the latest count, at least when I started, was at 93. There are still thousands of people who are not accounted for. It is a horrifying situation. Let me see which one I have already donated personally, but we put donation links on my video, on my coverage of the Hawaii disaster. An uncomfortable number of native Hawaiians are now buying into the directed energy weapon conspiracy now. It's so fucking sad. I can see that. Why? Because the reality is banal, boring, and yet just as evil. Okay? But boring evil is hard to explain. Okay? 1, sometimes awful things happen for no particular reason. 2, sometimes awful things are slated to happen, and yet we accelerate the likelihood of it happening or the devastation it causes, anthropogenic climate change. Okay? Describing that takes a lot of time and effort. However, saying it's actually a fucking space laser that zapped Hawaii, it's a space laser that zapped Hawaii like Dim Tool is saying over here. Okay? That's easy. That's easy to say. Plus, there's also a leftist conspiracy that you can tie it to, because you can say what will likely happen in Hawaii in the aftermath of this, which is developers will come in and they will rebuild and they will displace more native Hawaiians living in the area, especially this historic location that, as far as I understand it, didn't have beaches that were just as viable as other spots in Hawaii, but they'll take that. So, like, that's already going to happen. And if you're Hawaiian, if you are a native, if you're a resident of Hawaii, you already know, you've seen it. You've seen that happen all the time. So that makes sense, right? That fucking makes sense. Now, the second part of that conspiracy is real. Yeah, shouts out to Shock Doctrine. Shouts out to Naomi Klein. I mean, she's written about this extensively. She wrote about this in specifically in regards to Puerto Rico. Okay. The notion that every natural disaster is a wonderful opportunity for people like venture capital or vulturous predatory capitalists to come in and turn profit is real. It's a very real thing that happens. Do you get it? Disaster capitalism is very real. So if you have experienced some of it, if you know that it's happening, then you are way more susceptible to believing the conspiratorial component because you've already experienced it. Yeah, it's an opportunity for finance capital to exercise itself domestically. Yep. Never let a good disaster go to waste. Yep. So now, all of a sudden, you have a very real thing that is going to happen in the aftermath of these wildfires, and you tie that to why, like a sexy way to describe why the wildfires happen. That is easy to understand, not as convoluted or complicated like describing natural disasters and the exacerbation of their magnitude and their frequency, right? And then that's it. People believe it. That's how you move away. If you desperately, in liberal media, move away from a materialist understanding of the world, you ultimately are opening up avenues for conspiratorial-minded people to get in and put puzzle pieces together. Do you get it? Do you understand? Because there's very real parts of this. Lahaina residents worry that the rebuilt homes in their Maui town could slip into the hands of affluent outsiders seeking a tropical haven rather than homegrown residents who give the Hawaii island its spirit and identity. Oh, this is the one I gave to, I'm pretty sure. Support immediate relief, long-term recovery, organizing, and power. Come on, Space Laser, they're trolling? No, they're not. Conservatives are not trolling. If you think conservatives aren't this stupid, you haven't been watching me for a while. I think part of it is that there's something deeply unsatisfying about a slow-moving, multi-systemic cause that doesn't match the sudden catastrophic devastation people experience. 100%. 100%. Like, one, people are that stupid, for sure. Conservatives are that stupid, especially when it, like, leans on pre-existing biases that they have, like the big boogeyman in the room, China, right? Like the 3-minute ad break is the big boogeyman, right? You know it's coming. You're afraid of it. You can blame all of your faults and all of your failures on the 3-minute ad break at the top of the hour. If you no longer want to see those ads, all you need to do is subscribe. You don't have to be afraid of it. It's not an existential threat. They think the nectar of the gods is in on it. That's awesome. Stalker Gore, thank you for the 10 gifted subs, allowing 10 people to no longer see the ads at the top of the hour. He's a 3-minute ad break now. Moving on from that. So, absolute banger of a QRT in response to an Anthony Oliver stan. What is that? Oh, Jesus. This is a good one. Okay. Innuendo Studio covers this well. The alt-right playbook, Control the Conversation. We'll get to that in a second. So first, let's cover what has happened thus far. Okay, let's talk about what has happened in Hawaii so far. Okay, where the fuck is it? God damn it. Oh, here. And then let's cover the latest updates on what's going on in Maui. Then we'll talk about the conspiracy theories. And then we'll talk about why conservatives engage in said conspiracy theories. Let's start
Evening from here in Maui, where we have just learned that this is now the deadliest wildfire in modern U.S. history. And just behind us, this is the remnants of a house burned in another blaze, as the entire island is battling ideal conditions right now for wildfires. What we know about this tragedy is already unbearable. Nearly 100 dead, more than 2,000 homes and buildings destroyed. But we are still so far from understanding the full toll, and we'll explain why tonight. This is the overhead view of the sweeping devastation in Lahaina. We now know that only 3% of those homes have been checked for bodies. Just next to where we're broadcasting tonight, we have 2 cars incinerated by the wildfires.
Was it man-made fire? We don't know. No, I don't think it was man-made. No, it's man-made in the sense that like there are accelerants that played a role that our involvement has like made worse, but I don't think it's man-made in the sense that like someone literally lit a fire.
That right there was a test.
It's man-made in the sense that climate change, anthropogenic climate change is man-made. The contributions of anthropogenic climate change are man-made.
You can see what's left of the front row seats in the distance. That was a lush green hill, now scorched to its core. It shows the power of these wildfires. The governor has been warning that the death toll will go up, and there are still so many residents who escaped the flames but are now searching for their loved ones, and tonight angry at officials and a warning system they say failed them.
MG, wrong turn! Wrong turn! Oh.
Tonight, this is what it looked and felt like escaping the Lahaina wildfire.
Oh no, guys! No, we have to leave!
This new video showing the sheer panic as a family stuck in a line of cars had minutes to escape before the flames engulfed the road out.
This is a disaster.
Yeah, I think what is it like? It's high winds. Some power lines fell on palm trees. Some power lines fell, which started it. There's bad land management, which was an accelerant. Bad land management in the sense that like the non-native grass is way more susceptible to drying out, especially with like a tremendous amount of sunlight. Super high winds, very dry air, carries it very quickly, impossible to manage in a short period of time. Everything engulfs in flame. It turns into hell.
That drive through hell is how Rafa Ochoa and his family made it out alive.
I knew it was bad.
And it was moving fast?
And it was moving fast, really fast. It got to our homes within seconds.
With the fast-moving fire closing in on his home, Ochoa heroically grabbed both his kids and his friends' children. Their parents were at work and scrambled everyone out. Did you hear any alarms? Did you get any kind of warning?
No alarms, no warning, nothing. No sign, nothing that we had to evacuate. Not even police rolling by telling us to evacuate or anything.
The desperation of those chilling moments now turning to anger.
Where were you guys to try and get us out, evacuate us? No, we're mad. We're mad. No, we didn't just lose our homes. We lost our town. We lost history, you know? Our kids are traumatized. You guys messed up real bad.
Hawaii emergency officials have said sirens on the island weren't activated during the fire, though other alerts by phone and broadcast were.
Having seen that storm, we have doubts that much could have been done with a fiery, fast-moving fire like that.
The scale of the devastating loss now unprecedented in modern times. The deadliest wildfire in the U.S. in more than 100 years, claiming at least 93 lives.
Just so you know, 3%, that's what's been searched with the dogs, 3%. When we pick up the remains and they fall apart, And so when you have 200 people running through the scene yesterday, I don't know how much more you want me to describe it. That's what you're stepping on.
As FEMA and the governor survey the damage, search teams with cadaver dogs that just arrived to Maui yesterday now scouring the ruins of historic Lahaina again today. Are you saying we're just at the beginning of this disaster?
So for the first few days, we had done searches in the streets and the cars that were in the area. But we couldn't enter any structures. My police officers, they're trained to go chase bad guys, respond to robberies, take reports. But they're not trained to go enter smoldering structures to go look for human remains.
Questions are also mounting tonight over the cause of the blaze, which is still under investigation, with FBI evidence recovery teams now on scene. And a new class action lawsuit alleges the destruction could have been avoided if the utility company had de-energized its power lines ahead of the high wind weather. In a statement, Hawaiian Electric saying the utility doesn't comment on pending litigation, adding in part that high wind protocols.
Brother, let me tell you a thing or two as a Californian about massive utility companies and how little they give a fuck and how much they contribute to massively fucked up wildfires, okay? Isn't this all in just in hindsight? I don't know the exact details of like how much knowledge or what kind of like modus operandi the Hawaiian Electric Company has for high winds. But if I were to speculate, and I don't know. But knowing what I do know about utility companies, and this is pure speculation, I'm willing to bet if I were to look it up right now, let's do it. Maybe there's probably a random local media bullet point about how Hawaiian Electric was told after getting like multiple $1 billion in fucking tax breaks to upgrade their infrastructure so they could potentially modernize their electrical grid. Helco is pretty hated in Hawaii. Interesting note. Kauai actually has an electricity cooperative. The other islands are on Helco. I'm just saying what I do know about utility companies and the weird relationship that they have. On May 15, 2025, Hawaiian Electric, this is from their website for the record, this is their PR line. Hawaiian Electric finalizes integrated grid plan to decarbonize the energy system by 2045, stabilize rates, grid modernization technologies, remote intelligence switch, utility pole mounted automated switch enabling faster outage restoration, remote fault indicators, provides precise location of faults enabling faster outage restoration, advanced inverters, response to changes in rooftop solar output, advanced meters, wireless networking area network, line sensors. I mean, this is all just like renewable energy initiatives. I don't know if they have like I don't know if their modernization plan also had safety measures in place. But the Atlantic wrote about it. It seems in a sponsored post. What the fuck? Why is Hawaii upgrading its power grid? With an investment of more than $200 million, the state is laying the groundwork for smarter solar power and a path towards energy independence. Let's take a look if there's any kind of safety measures that they put in there. Well, not in this article. How about no overhead lines in residential areas? There's so much friction between the locals and the power company on the Big Island, especially in regards to geothermal. The shitty thing about Hawaii is that they do not have enough engineers to design the replacement of all their grid. I'm a utility contractor. My company would routinely send offers out for people to move to Hawaii as an engineer. Isn't the right blaming this for the reason on the fire, turning Hawaii to a smart island? Wait, what? But this is, guys, this is just this integrated grid plan is just a clean energy plan. I don't know what their safety measures are. And if they had any kind of, I don't know if they had any kind of, like, new modernization of the grid can mean multiple different things. This seems like it's just more so for energy projects and like decarbonization, you know, utilizing solar panels, things of that nature. Okay. What we're talking about is different. Usually a lot of these companies, and I'm not going to be able to find this in the fucking PR component of Hawaiian Electric. You know what I mean? It usually is hidden in like the local news. You know what I mean? Hawaiian Electric seeks approval for meaner 205 million grid modernization plan. Helco's new phase and customer-focused plan to integrate distributed and renewable energy into its grids. The Hawaiian Electric Modernization's Wildfire strategy. Because right now they're getting scrutiny for not cutting power to reduce the fire risks. This is all the good PR stuff that they can get passed to the local government, not the real stuff that will solve the issues. Look at what the Texas Republicans did after Texas got taken out by a winter storm. Nothing. The reason I mentioned the Kauai is because they love the Kauai Cooperative and hate Hawaiian Electric. It's an example of how a cooperative can do better. I mean, Tennessee Valley Authority is another example of this. Okay, here's something I found. Blog post. The Hawaiian Electric Companies filed a request with the Public Utilities Commission on September 30th, 2019 for Phase 2 of their grid modernization project. The only other entity in the open and ongoing proceeding is the consumer advocate. HECO filed a request with the PUC to spend $190 million to harden the grid. The other entities in the open and ongoing proceeding are the Consumer Advocate, Ulupono Initiative, and the Life of the Land. The grid hardening application stated, since 2015, Governor Ige issued at least 15 weather-related emergency proclamations for events including hurricanes, tropical storms, flooding, landslides, wildfire, and lava eruptions, among others. The Wildfire Prevention and Mitigation Initiative includes targeted system hardening and situational awareness investments in wildfire risk areas to prevent wildfire ignition and enable quicker response to any ignitions that do occur. The risk of a utility system causing a wildfire ignition is significant. For example, the PG&E ignition of the Camp Fire resulted in a $15 billion settlement. As such, wildfire ignition mitigation has become a regulatory requirement in California and in Australia. Considering the devastating California wildfires of 2018 and the company's own experiences in 2019, the companies have taken proactive action to address wildfire risks. To this end, the companies reviewed the San Diego Gas and Electric, Southern California Edison, and Pacific Gas and Electric mandated wildfire mitigation plans to identify best practices that would be appropriate for Hawaii's environment and weather conditions. In addition, the companies performed assessment of potential wildfire areas in Oahu, Maui, Lanai, Molokai, and Hawaii Island. The company's wildfire prevention and mitigation initiative has the following objectives. 1, minimize the probability of the company's facilities becoming the origin or contributing source of the ignition of a wildfire. 2, prevent the company's facilities from contributing to the severity or breadth of wildfires. 3, identify and implement operational procedure to ensure the companies can respond effectively to a wildfire without compromising customer and employee safety while remaining sensitive to the customer's need for reliable electricity. This last part is really important because that's where you arrive at the issue. Because every single time something like this happens, they obviously have, usually, unless they have completely failed in modernizing the grid so that they don't have any kind of like high wind alerts or anything like that, okay, which I doubt that they didn't, you are warned that power lines could go down. And when a situation like that occurs, you're supposed to cut the power line. You're supposed to cut the power to the power line. An example I will give you is Kaya, for example, was eating my cable, my webcam cable. Okay? She was eating my webcam cable. If that was connected to electricity, she could have actually electrocuted herself. Luckily, it was not. So there was no electricity running through it. That's how and that's low voltage, but I'm just giving you an example of like, how things could be much worse if you don't take the necessary precautions. However, every single time there is a there is an opportunity, or rather a situation that requires you to cut electricity, you are running into the problem. You are running into the problem where you are going to piss off a lot of people. Not only just pissing off a lot of people, but also, like, you know, there's hospitals and shit on the grid, right? Even though hospitals also have a specific grid, and on top of that, they have generators and whatnot for, they have a contingency plan specifically for situations like this. But it doesn't matter. It's like, you know, there are very real reasons why you wouldn't want to cut the electricity, and also some reasons that you don't want to cut electricity for consumer and customer need for reliable electricity. Recognizing the importance of addressing wildfire risk, the companies began wildfire prevention and mitigation activities in 2019. However, these efforts are not routine business as usual or common historical practice. Multi-pronged approach is what they did. Pole hardening, changing horizontal conductor configurations to a vertical or delta to reduce the probability of swing shorts. Proactive replacement of copper conductors with aluminum in wildfire risk areas. Copper conductors tend to become brittle and pose a higher risk of failure compared to aluminum. Installing weather stations in strategic locations to monitor wind speed and relative humidity. Detection of high-risk conditions will be used to trigger alternative operational procedures to minimize the risk of wildfires and enable expedient result. I'm a grid modernization program manager. This whole situation sucks. Billions are being put into wildfire mitigation in my company. I mean, yeah. Well, if you don't do that, then, you know, there are hundreds of, if not thousands of people that will die as a consequence of wildfires, especially when these companies are quite literally getting subsidies to do these kinds of things. They are already operating on the grid that was previously created by the federal government, or created with federal government dollars or local state government dollars. And then the expectation is that they will utilize those funds adequately, directing it specifically in hardening your grid to mitigate further disaster. But of course, people that work at the tippy top of PG&E, or people that work at the tippy top of any kind of utility company, just like any other capitalist corporation, is not doing that. They're not going to take all the money to specifically utilize it for grid hardening. They will try to find a way to maximize their own salaries. And their salaries are oftentimes tied to the performance of the product, increasing shareholder value. And the best possible way to increase shareholder value is not utilizing every single dollar that you got for grid hardening towards hardening the grid, but instead engaging in, you know, some kind of math, big salaries, payouts, things of that nature. Stock buybacks, especially when you have a direct monopoly on the power grid in a particular area. Remember, utilities are a natural monopoly. This is an industry. Energy is an industry that is prone because it has a massive natural barrier of entry. This is why a lot of people make the argument that these should be localized and owned by the government. Okay? That's how it works. Anyway, on Hawaii Island, current wildfire priority areas include Waikoloa Village, Naalehu, Kohala, and Poha Kuloa. The total estimated program for Hawaii Island is $2.5 million. HYCO responded to a Life of Land information request. Life of the Land filed an information request saying, San Diego Gas and Electric has developed a system intended to cut off power to a falling power line before it hits the ground, therefore avoiding a possible ignition. SDG&E's research found that it takes 1.37 seconds for a broken conductor to hit the ground, for example, if a tree falls into the line or a vehicle hits a power pole. When the line contacts the ground, sparks can ignite vegetation. The system is designed to detect a break and shut off power before the clock hits 1.37 seconds, hopefully avoiding what could become a dangerous wildfire. Could HYCO decrease the likelihood of igniting a wildfire by adopting similar technology? They said that they are deploying smart fuses that, when activated during wildfire conditions, e.g. red flag warnings, will cut off power less than one cycle after a fault is detected. What the fuck? What just happened? Thus, the intensity of sparks created from the fault is significantly reduced. These devices are being installed on circuit in areas that are identified as high risk for wildfires. The SDG&E broken conductor detection system is a demonstration of an emerging technology application. These types of systems typically require extensive installation of high-resolution phaser measurement units, PMUs, and fast and secure, reliable communication to each PMU in the unit on the circuit. At this time, it is unclear how much more mitigation benefit a broken conductor detection system like the SDG&E system would provide beyond what is currently being done in our wildfire risk areas. However, Hawaiian Electric will continue to monitor new technologies that could potentially complement the current smart fuses and minimize the likelihood of igniting a wildfire. It's emerging technology. We don't know if it's valuable. We have smart fuses instead. In Northern California, PG&E used to have blackouts almost every week during fire season, especially after the campfire. A lot of people's foods would spoil. A lot of the elderly lost access to their essential health electronics. PG&E have just begun to harden the grid by putting power lines underground now, but after several years, and whole cities burned to the ground. That is the other part of the problem. There is one way to mitigate some of the worst aspects of this. I live in NorCal. That is not true. As far as I understand, and I am no big city lawyer, but moving some of the power lines underground would, at the very least, actually be a cost-effective measure in the long term, but of course, an incredibly expensive one in the short term. Here's why. One thing that we do know, and again, I am no big city lawyer, okay? I am no big city lawyer. I am not up to date with hardening grids and electricity delivery mechanisms. But as far as I understand, in the short term, when you have an above ground electrical grid, especially in areas where there are a lot of trees that are susceptible to falling, okay? One thing that you're supposed to do, not even just falling trees, but one thing you're supposed to do with respect to upkeep, which PG&E failed to do, for example, is to cut the vegetation that is in contact with the fucking power lines. Okay? This is a big part of it. Like upkeep and specifically making sure that like no natural wildlife, or not even wildlife, but like the natural vegetation is touching the power grid. That is a profoundly expensive endeavor. Okay? It is quite literally, it's expensive. You want to know why I know it's expensive? Because they don't do it. As a cost-effective measure, they just choose to not do it. They don't keep the fucking floor in check. That leads to a lot of fucking problems. Okay? That leads to a lot of problems. One, they don't do it in the appropriate way, which is to mitigate harm being done to the floor in and of itself. Okay? Yeah, here it is. Where is it? Was it one of the wildfires that occurred? I'm pretty sure in California had something related to this. Anyway, I want to understand burying high voltage lines in many cases is very difficult because of the heat that they create underground. So you wind up having to do a lot of active cooling on it and running it in huge tunnels or using water cooling loops very few kilometers. Yeah. So the other part of it, I mean, there's a lot of issues with also running utilities underground as well. Obviously, there's the cooling element. There's also fault lines. Clearly, I guess you could like earthquake proof it. But God knows if we have the willpower or the interest to do things like that. I don't know how well you could do that. My point is, more importantly than all of the other issues, that could potentially happen with underground electrical grids, is that it's also expensive. It's really expensive with no immediate short-term benefits. There are no immediate short-term benefits. It's only a costly endeavor. And it's also not a 100% surefire way to deliver electricity, as far as I understand, without any interruptions. Electrical engineer here. They didn't keep their right-of-ways clear. We maintain 60 to 250 right-of-way clearance. Our budget for landscaping is huge, but we also employ the latest grid tech too. Traveling wave daily location and our own fiber network to extinguish the faults. We spend the money for the long-term good strength. PG&E doesn't do that. Similar can be set aside for DTE out there. Now, think about how much we just talked about electrical grids, modernizing the grid, hardening the infrastructure to ensure that these kinds of ensure that people are safe, while also simultaneously keeping consumer and customer interests in need because they want reliable, uninterrupted electricity for obvious reasons. Okay? So all of this stuff is difficult to explain. You know what's not difficult to explain? Lasers. Okay? That's it. The truth is much more complicated. Okay? You have to talk about anthropogenic climate change. You have to talk about bad land management. You have to talk about non-native grass and why it is way drier. Okay? You have to talk about the electrical grid and multiple points of failure. You have to talk about a lack of adequate response immediately in a crisis, in a moment of crisis. What are the other components that led to the government not sounding the alarms as quickly as possible? Were they afraid that tourists would be terrified? Is that one of the reasons? You know, these are questions that you have to ask. However, you don't have to ask any of those questions if you say lasers are the reason. Okay? Especially when you're fucking Tim Pool. And you can tie that to a very real fear that a lot of Americans feel about another, a real present threat to America's hegemonic power. China. Chinese lasers. Not the Jewish lasers that were responsible for California wildfires, according to Marjorie Taylor Greene, but Chinese ones. Because guess what? Jewish space lasers, anti-Semitic conspiracy, fucking ridiculous. Chinese space lasers, on the other hand, well, very appropriate. We love that. Okay, let's hear what Tim Pool has to say.
Pollution.
Oh, you can call it whatever you want, but
Yeah,
my
right.
attitude is, look, we are not on good terms with China right now. I mean, we can pretend, oh no, trade's going on, everything's fine. No, come on. They want Taiwan. They're building up their military. There's a chance for escalation, a chance for conflict. They want the South China Sea. And then they've got ships with Russia coming near the Aleutians, coming near U.S. territory, going near Hawaii, and then they're pulling off something like this. So, look, how hard is it to start a fire? It's ridiculously easy to start a fire. And they can fire lasers? Okay.
It's a little challenging to get the fire to spread, but there were hurricane level. It said it was like hurricane level winds. Or there's.
Yeah, add a little bit of real truth into the conspiracy. You know, well, you know, really, really fast winds. Really fast winds. That is creating a ripe environment for the space laser to continue spreading the fire. To which Tim responds, no, you don't understand. It's multiple points of ignition.
I don't have high winds.
So they're saying
the
if they can start 50 fires all at once with a sequence of satellites doing high burst, high energy lasers, then getting fire to spread isn't really the issue because you make the fire instantly in a bunch of different places.
And they can monitor the weather in Hawaii. I mean, you could just Google that. Like what I was reading from the National Guardsman who's making a statement was that, you know, there's low humidity and high wind, so that's perfect conditions for wildfires to spread, which means any arson fires would also spread as quickly. Like China is perfectly able to say, like, this happens to be a dangerous period for fire in Hawaii. Perhaps now, if they were to do something. There was also a Chinese balloon observed above international waters near Hawaii in February 2022.
Wow. Right.
Yeah. So it does seem like obviously they have a targeted interest in Hawaii. And
remember when Marjorie Taylor Greene argued?
If Hurricane Harvey happened in 2023, they would have been calling it an HAARP operation. Oh, yeah. Well, remember, the Turkish earthquakes. There were conspiracy theories in Turkey that believed that it was the cause of HAARP, creating tectonic activity in Turkey, which is placed perfectly on top of fucking fault lines where massive earthquakes happen in great frequency and magnitude. Kaya, what are you eating? Kaya, what are you eating? Hello, baby. Sorry.
You that there were like space lasers that could start fires.
Maybe she was right.
I think it's really funny because they claimed she said Jewish space lasers when she mentioned like Rothschild's bank.
I love that he is like openly belittling Marjorie Taylor Greene's conspiracy and just like changing one component of it. That's wonderful. HAARP is High Frequency Active Auroral Research Program, which is a program to control the weather. It is a conspiracy theory favorite. Okay? Conspiracy theories abound as U.S. military closes the HAARP program. The U.S. Air Force has told Congress it intends to shut down HAARP, a controversial Alaska-based research facility that studies the upper atmosphere. It is a as far as I understand, it's like a relatively failed weather control research. I mean, it wasn't very successful. Relatively failed. So they believe that the U.S. military was interested in the ionosphere because this portion of the atmosphere plays a role in transmitting radio signals. HAARP sends radio beams in the ionosphere to study responses from it. One of the few ways to accurately measure this inaccessible part of the atmosphere. HAARP operates out of the research station in Alaska, where it has high-power radio frequency transmitter that can perturb a small portion of the ionosphere. Other instruments are then used to measure the perturbations. The goal of the program is to understand the physics of the ionosphere, which is constantly responding to influence from the sun. Solar flares can send solar particles racing down to Earth, occasionally disrupting communications in the electrical grid. They think that this was a way to conspiracy theories believe that this is a way to control the weather. Like this was actually a weather control weapon, and that's it. That's what they were claiming.
Damn, this guy's good.